Well, that doesn't really do much if you were muted. So, yeah, that's on me. All right. I'm actually going through here and doing a few things, trying to get situated, started so that I can do this stream. Let's see. Hello. All right. I don't know if it's working or not. So we're just going to roll with it and go. All right. Make sure that I'm not using any music or anything like that because apparently they get a little sensitive about that. So I'm getting ready to go over here. Let me share my screen. There we go. And that's not really going to be large enough. I'm going to work with this a little bit on this layout. What I'd like to do is just kind of go in here and chop it up a bit. So if somebody has questions, I might not see it, right? If you are typing through Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, any of these other mediums, I might not see that through this streaming software. So the best thing to do, if you have any questions, just right here at the bottom, right at the bottom of the banner, go ahead and just type out your questions. I'm leaving my texts open so that I can see them if somebody has a question. What I'd like to do is talk about real estate, some of the some of the changes that we're going through right now. Also, what that means for investors, or what it's at least meant for us. And I'm going to talk about some of the loans that I'm doing, some of the things that I've been up to that maybe not a lot of people are aware of. And I've kind of kept it quiet until it was time to really talk about it. Well, it's getting to be time to talk about it. So I'm pretty excited about this. What I would like to do is go ahead and start by sharing my screen and going into the MLS here, showing what the market kind of looks like back in Louisiana. Now, I'm putting this in here for single family homes, and we're only really going to be looking for Bossier and Caddo. Now, I know some people, especially people in South Florida, might be looking through this. Lee, why do you always, show stuff in Louisiana? Yeah, I do. It's because that's where I found the most deals, right? And I'm going to show you how we look through the MLS. Not only is it the MLS, we're also getting deals from other people like wholesalers. I know Lauren, she's been great. She's actually sent me 5 deals this year alone. So that's been great. Um, we're going to go through and kind of run some numbers on a few properties and show you how I get to the numbers that I get to and why I'm so protective of those numbers and why I've become even more protective of those numbers. A lot of it comes down to debt service, right? So a lot of people they understand what leverage is. Leverage, if you want to just oversimplify it, imagine that you want a drink from the refrigerator, right? And you would love to be able to stay in the same spot. You finally got comfortable on the couch, so comfy. And you're sitting there thinking, all right, how could I get said beverage from the refrigerator without me having to do it, right? Well, that's where you go in and you leverage people around you. If you have, a loving, caring wife that will go to the refrigerator for you and get you that beverage, that's leverage. Now, that's relationship leverage, which isn't necessarily the same thing because I can tell you that they'll do that enough before finally they start to tell you, get up and get your own damn drink. Maybe it is the same because eventually the bank will tell you, get up and use your own damn money. But let's talk about leverage a little bit more. Ever since I got out of the casino business, I read this quote one day whenever I was first getting on LinkedIn. And that quote sums up and says something to the sense of it's by Archimedes, Greek philosopher. It says that give me a long enough lever and a place to stand, and I can move the world. And since then, that's actually been a huge part of what I do, right? Is looking for the leverage points. Where can I apply leverage? How can I essentially become 2, 3, 4, 5 times who I am and leverage that out, right? So, what can I do for that? It doesn't come down to just going after drinks, right? Or asking for drinks. Leverage comes down to debt service a lot of the times for investors. So we're going to be going out and I'm going to show you one of the key components of leverage, which is a mortgage through your private, well, you've got private money, institutional lending, you've got secondary markets, you've got hard money lenders, you've got DSCR lenders, all kinds of ways to make these things happen. Now I'm going to show you some of my favorite ways. Oh, look at that. All right. So I made this part a little bit bigger. This is actually just an old portfolio that I was looking at, and while it didn't necessarily work well for what I'm looking to do, I'm going to share with you how I get to these numbers, how I kind of back these numbers up, so that whenever I get to my purchase price, people understand that okay, well it's simply math. It's not that he's just trying to sit here and give a low ball offer. So I'm going to clean some of this stuff up right quick. And we're going to go in. I know that some of you, it's 5:45, so maybe some of you back in Louisiana, just getting home from work. I understand. Go get you a bite to eat. I plan to be here for a little while, even if I just kind of zone out. You just text me. I'll pop in and we'll start to talk a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to apply the leverage, how to find the property, and see what makes sense, right? So we're going to look for a single family residence home. Let's say that we want two baths, we want at least three bedrooms, and let's say that we want to stay under $150,000 for something like this. If you're watching it and you're not in Louisiana, yeah, I get it. It probably doesn't sound like there's going to be a lot to choose from. However, there are 87 homes currently in Caddo and Bossier parishes that match that high level criteria. So I'm going to go through and we're just going to look and identify what might make sense to us. Okay. Let's check out this one here. 344 Ockley. So it was 105,000. It's now 99. I think this one's like gutted. So it's, yeah. All right. That's not going to make much sense for what we need to do. It's got too heavy of a lift. And by the time you put in the work for it, it's not going to make sense on the numbers. 1144 Dudley. Eh? Okay, this could be what we're looking for. All right. Look at a few things on this, right? So to look at this from an investor's perspective, we're going to go through. I see a nice yard. I think that anybody that rents this could appreciate that until they have to mow it two times a week in the summer. You know, looks like we've got some tile. Now, I will say that on the ceiling there, you see these little tile ceiling panels. It's not a drop ceiling or anything. It's just this really cheap styrofoam that you essentially put up. Um, and that's what happens over time is that the dust, the dirt, and everything starts to really just collect up there. You've got paneling. Personally, I don't like paneling in a house. I would like to go over here and budget enough of a rehab to replace the carpet. You can see here that the carpet's going to be stained. So more than likely, it's just going to need to be pulled up. You're going to lay down carpet in the bedrooms. You're going to lay down LVP or some kind of water resistant flooring in the wet areas. That's going to be your kitchen, your bathrooms. And then I also like to put it into the living room hallways as well. Yeah, this doesn't look like a bad property. It's got some good bones. One of the other things I check, and I learned this lesson a long time ago. We actually went out and I bought a property, and I was in such a rush to make a deal that I made a huge mistake. And ever since then, I've checked this. But there was this property in Shreveport. Met with the owner. The owner had his eyesight was failing, and he just knew that he wasn't going to be able to continue being a property manager, fixing up the properties and everything else that he had been doing. So he decided he was going to sell. This was the last property that he had. This property was a great property, right? I go over there and I mean, it had a lot of potential. Under market rents. It was a duplex, two-story, great location. And I told him, and this was me being a little overzealous. I told him, I said, look, I understand that my offer might not be the highest. However, you want to close in a week? I can close literally in 4 days. Uh, but my offer is going to be $70,000. He thought about it for a second, and literally it was less than a minute. We talked, hashed it out, handshook, and I gave him the contract. He signed it, and it was the day before closing because I called up my friends at the title company. I said, "Hey, look, I know this is a rush, and I'm sorry. I just kind of let my mouth get away with it, and could you please rush this title really quickly?" So they did, and I go and I get ready to bind my insurance the day of closing, and the insurance company says, "Yeah, Lee, we'll go ahead and get this set up. Are you going to want flood insurance for your mortgage?" And this was a time then Kathy and I, every property that we bought at that time was properties that we were just putting down, leverage. We were financing through the bank. And in a flood zone, a bank will require that you carry flood insurance. That was a huge mistake because I did not check the flood zone whenever I did my research on the property. So now, ever since then, I go over here and I look to see is this in a flood zone before I really dive in further. I already own one, two property. No, sorry, I own one here and I own three, four houses on Waller, which is right here in Bossier City. And I know this isn't a flood area, but for illustrative purposes, I want you to see what this looks like. So I go there, make sure it's not in a flood zone because that's going to also impact uh, what you want to call your cash flow whenever you're analyzing a property. What you're looking for is you're looking to get to your PCF or positive cash flow. Now, if you don't have 100 and what are they looking for? $99,000. So if you don't have $99,000 cash, you're probably going to use a bank for some financing. Now, let's go ahead and go through what this looks like. This is again a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. I know that the HUD FMRs, that's going to be housing and urban development. FMRs is fair market rents, and that specifically comes into play for Section 8 housing. So I'll show you what that looks like on the website. I'm just going to bring this up here, let you see what the screen looks like. Other data sets, no. Here, we're going to look and see what the FMRs are. Now, again, I'm a fan of Section 8 housing and government housing because number one, they also hold their tenants to account. Used to, they didn't care. However, now if you have a tenant that comes into your property and they're a bad tenant and they trash it on the way out, they can actually get removed from the program entirely and lose their voucher. So there's definitely a sense of responsibility on the tenant to actually help take care of that property. That's one of the reasons that I like it. So let's go through. We're going to look at Bossier Parish. And this gives you what you could expect for Section 8 to pay up to this amount in this market. So in Bossier City, a 3 bedroom, 2025. Now, it was 1358, right? So they're doing what we call retraction. They're doing a little contract of the rent of 1317 is what they would pay. So I know conservatively, this is going to be the key to what I do is well, just about everything is conservative, very aggressive and conservative, very demure. So going through, I'm going to actually set my rent back to about 1200 to 1250. So again, this whole process, it's just reverse engineer. So if I know that this property is asking 99,000 and yet I know that I could get 1250 on it, I use what is called a GRM. So if you look at this little square here, that is an abbreviation or acronym for gross rent multiplier. What I'm looking for is how long does it take me to recoup my money? If I did bring a bag of cash over here to the title company and I said, there, set it down, I want to know how long would it take me to get my money back? Well, there's another component to it. If I say that I want my money back in 5 years, then that formula tells me what would my quick offer be on this home? It would be $75,000 if it was already completely turnkey. So that means that we don't have any deferred maintenance. We don't have to replace an HVAC. We don't have to do any foundation work. The plumbing is good. The electric's up to code, right? Even the peeling and chipping paint isn't present on the property. It is truly rent ready at that price. Well, it's not. So let's go in here and just take a look at what we see that needs to be done. Now, again, this is a little bit tricky. It's a little bit difficult whenever you aren't really trained for it, but whenever you've looked at a few thousand houses and walked over 1,000 houses and well, you've done the deals, you get a pretty comfortable sense about where you're going to be. So if we look over here, it looks like the roof is fairly new-ish. The windows, just single slung aluminum windows. You've got vinyl siding, which does address the elephant in the room as far as looking at some of the different issues with peeling, chipping paint, etc. Going through here, I don't see any red flags. Again, you've got to try to picture everything cleared, right? So all the belongings and everything out of the house, what's it look like? I don't see where I'm going to need to replace the floor, but yet if you look really closely, and it's probably going to be extremely hard to see this on my tile. So let me just see if I can increase that for you. I don't see the way to do it. But if you want to really dive in and look at this, then give me a shout. I'll get you the listing information on it. It's actually 1144 Dudley Lane in Bossier. But if you zoom into these photos, You see right here where the lips, where these edges of that flooring meet, it's got a little bit of a buckle right there, right? And it's not a big deal, not right now. But over time, that's going to accelerate the wear and tear of that flooring, right? So, more than likely, this isn't truly a waterproof. And what happens is it rains, people walk in with wet shoes, and then over time, it can get wet. Even a spill, somebody spills a drink or something on the floor, that can happen. So just know that eventually this is going to be on your list of things to do. It might be one tenant cycle, it might be two tenant cycles, but it's coming. It's going to be there sooner than later. So just be aware of that. I see in the kitchen the uppers, the lowers, they look good. The stove is fine, but it's missing something. And if you'll learn to look for these kind of things, but it's missing a vent hood. Kind of need one of those, right? Otherwise, you just got smoke and grease and everything going up, and it's not really great. You'll start to see a stain. Actually, yeah, if you look, you start to see the stain from that right there. So that'll end up having to be painted. And if you don't do that properly, you're going to have to do that almost every time a tenant comes and goes. So just be aware of that. The doors, right? So just kind of looking here, the doors, and not that it's a big deal, but you see these handles, these are very old handles. More than likely, it's going to be older doors with that very slender, what's called a Mortise lock. Now, I don't like those kind of locks because whenever, say, somebody gets locked into a bathroom and they can't get it to jiggle or they can't get it to open, they're going to complain. And that's just one more thing to send a handyman out or a handy person out for. And you don't want that, right? Because next thing you know, you're paying X amount per hour for somebody to go over there and fumble around with this old Mortise lock that they may or may not have experience with. So chances are I'm going to go through, and if that door is too thin, some of them are, to actually put in your standard lock, then I'm just going to have to replace the whole door. So you start doing the math on that. How much would the doors be? Well, these doors, typically just standard little six panels, you get them for 60 bucks a pop. Get them installed, just add that to your deferred maintenance. Um, Now, I will tell you as well, look at the surround in here. All right. Chances are it looks like there's some kind of wallpaper that was there at one point. Maybe it's down, but you're going to go in, more than likely, you're going to resurface the tub unless they show an image of the tub, put some FRP around there, maybe an insert if you're feeling fancy. Um, I wouldn't worry about that too much. It's already got tile floor. Chances are, unless you lift these little placemats up and see that they're cracked or anything like that, you're going to leave well enough alone. You're going to have some plumbing issues over time. You see here that's missing. You're going to need to put that back in there for the stopper. Not a big deal, right? So it's just you start to get a feel for how many of these small things am I going to have to allocate for just to make sure that it all goes where it needs to be. And I'm not saying that the toilet would be loose from the base, but typically that's just a sign that those bolts that keep your toilet down could be loose. Again, you don't want to over analyze it, nitpick it, but these are all small things that I've just learned to see over the years. Ceiling fan looks good, bed looks functional, or bedroom looks perfectly functional. The paneling, while I'm not a fan of it at this price point, I might just leave it where it's at. And if we go in and we paint the house, put in some new flooring, I might overlay the paneling. I don't know. Air registers look decent. Bonus room. Now, here's another thing to look at. You see the AC in here. Well, a window unit in a house that has central air and heat typically indicates that the central air and heat is not carrying as strong as it should. Or maybe they're just very cold natured and, they don't have it as cold as they'd like it to be. I see some missing pools. So you're going to have to go in here and clean this up. Um, this is more of a laundry area. You know what? I might just remove those uppers and lowers just to create more space for the room. And this is the other bathroom. Again, tile, not a big deal. Looks fairly straightforward. All right. I'd say all in all, this house isn't going to take more than, let's just say, $15,000 to fix up. Now we get down to what I would call my final offer. That's going to be $60,000. Well, that might be my offer to purchase, but remember, I still have to capture that deferred maintenance. I have to pay for that. So whenever I go to my bank and say, "Hey, look, I'm looking for some financing on this," I'm sure by now, if you've followed me for any length of time, you understand that it's no secret that I like to finance every dollar as close to every dollar back out of the deal that I can without over leveraging. All right. So let's talk about some of this. Let's say that I get this down for $60,000, but I'm going to be all in at 75,000. My mortgage, now, again, round numbers, so let's not nitpick it too much. You're going to have 1,000 here for doc fees. You're going to have appraisal, a few different things, some closing costs. I'm not going to sit there and sweat it all, but this will give me a roundabout of where my mortgage is. Now, property taxes. Let's look and see what property taxes look like on this property. Give it a second. Let it load. All right. So here's your mailing address. Going to Longview, Texas. Now, this is all public information. So, don't get mad at me if you're the person that owns this house and you see that I'm going through it. Looks like in 22, they paid $312. That's kind of low. That's actually really low. Hmm. I want to up that a bit just because I don't necessarily like that number. So, and we're talking like monthly, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and put it at 60 a month. That's going to be 720 a year, which still might be a little bit low, to be honest with you, whenever the new assessment comes out. And then we're going to go 10%, and that's going to be our property management. That's what our property manager charges us to manage the property and take care of everything that we need them to do for that. Now, insurance, this can be all over the place. I typically, my average policy is going to run about $850, $900 a year. So I'm going to put $75 in there. So by the time you go 750, you're going to be 900 there after 12 months. Owner paid utilities. I don't pay utilities, not on these kind of properties. So that's going to be a zero. You would have, if you had HOA fees, you would put it in that field. Maintenance reserve, typically, again, I like to put 10% back on maintenance and vacancy. Even though typically we don't run that that wild, we might be closer to that 7.5, sometimes 10, to be honest. I still put that in there just to be on the safe side. So all of this rambling and everything else, I know where you're probably at. Like, Lee, where are we at? How do we get this? My monthly cash flow, this is going to be after all expenses. Okay. That's the key. What do I stand to make after all expenses? Now, if we go in there, $113 a month, is that something that excites you to make $113 a month? No, not necessarily. But I can tell you that in these properties, in these class properties, I like to see a minimum of 150 a month. That's just my small break even in these small price points. Okay, because if you extrapolate that, right, and you go into some of these other markets to where, let's say I'm going to buy something at 500,000. Well, obviously, you don't spend $500,000 for 150. But whenever you're sub 100K for that, yeah, you know, I'll take it because now I can buy five houses sub 100K to get to that one $500,000 house, and that's going to put you at what 150. That's 3, 6, 750 a month. That's not too bad by the time you put that much risk out. So let's see what we're looking at with the banks. Now, the bank mortgage, is there any way that I can manipulate this? Well, I can tell you that most banks, your small local community banks, they want to go at 15-year amortization on their notes. So they might give you, an 8% loan on a 15-year amortization. But look at what it does. It jumps that mortgage up and it cripples it. So personally, if I can't get with a bank that's going to give me at least 20-year amortization, now, quick note, it's a 5-year term. So in 5 years, you're going to have to pay that off, refinance it, sell it, whatever it is that you're looking to do. But you're going to have to cycle that money back out in 5 years. Well, I don't like that. So I have to go to 20-year because what does that do? That gives me some cash flow. There are some lenders that will give 25-year amortization. Did you see what I just did? I just hit my PCF, my positive cash flow of $161. Okay, great. Now, that being said, here's the thing. This is where the challenge is, right? They're asking 99,000. I just ran numbers to get me to $60,000. Well, let's go back and see what else we got to do because more than likely the bank is going to be giving me a 20-year amortization, right? Now, how do I get my 113 up to that? Some of these are just hard costs, right? There's a few things I'm not going to do. I'm not going to underestimate property taxes. I want to make sure that I have the proper insurance policy, right? You can go over there and you can get a $40 a month policy on that property, but it's going to be cash value. It's going to have depreciation built in. You're not going to get a full payout if you need it in the event of a loss. Personally, I go for replacement value on my stuff. Now, I could go over here and I could minimize. I could probably make a few extra $1,000 a month just by changing that. Me personally is the peace of mind. I like to know that whenever I go over here and I call up my insurance agent and I say, hey, you're dropping names because they ain't paying me to. But anyway, if I go over here and I say, hey, look, I got this loss over here. I need your help. And they don't come through, they don't fight for me, they don't work with me, they're not my agent. But also, I want to make sure that I give them every reason to accept and cover my claim. Versus, well, we had this policy and your roof was 12 years old, so we're going to deduct 12 years of value off of that roof, and we're going to give you what's left. And well, now here's $1,500. Go get a new roof. Hell, I don't know about you. I've priced roofs out lately, and they're not $1,500 unless you're buying a 500 square foot shack. Let's see. Hang on. All right. Could you? Yeah. All right. So, could I get around to what I was getting to? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and show you how we'll push this back. Now, I'll leave property management alone because, again, a good property manager worth their weight in gold. I'm not trying to sit there and tell somebody, hey, well, would you do it for half? No, no, that's not. It's not who I am. It's not who I will. And I don't work for discounts either. So I'm not going to ask them to. I could improve the maintenance. I can improve the vacancy. So those are just some invisible costs that I know that I might be able to improve, but I'm also not going to move that off. So what's the only other thing that we can do if we're buying this from the seller without terms, right? Or without them giving us terms? Quite simply, we have to offer them less. So let's see if I can be all in for 70,000. Now, again, I'm going to be fixed at $15,000 of capex, right? So capex, capital expenditures, which means addressing the deferred maintenance, anything that in the house that needs to be done to get it to where I need it to be. So let's say that if I go to the bank and I finance 70,000 under the terms that I know I could get, oh, there it is. That small $5,000 difference makes all the difference for me. It hits me where I need to be. Great. So would the seller come down another $5,000? Could I talk them into taking that much less? Well, let me show you this. This is it's just an automated value model. Okay. The AVM. It's showing that the real AVM is 97,000 for retail. I don't necessarily care because I'm not a retail buyer. I'm going to go through and say that, all right, I know that my bank will come in here whenever I go to finance it. And the appraisal is probably going to be north of $100,000. All right. Just because I know the area, I've got appraisals on file for other properties in that area, and that's what they're hitting. So if I know that, then I could probably still see where are there. Is there anything that gives me, spaghetti? Look at this. Looks like, and I'm being brief because I don't want to put too much stuff out there. You'll have to come back, play it back, whatever you want to do. But they did not seem to have a mortgage. I love properties like that because they might, depending on what's going on in their life. right? They might be able to take the solution that I can offer, which would be a $55,000 cash purchase, close in 15 days with a 5-day inspection period, which means that if for some reason they do take my 55,000, I can be all in on this property for give or take that 70, 72,000, whatever that might look like. And then I'm still going to cash flow $155 a month. It doesn't sound too bad. Now, what I like about this is that I don't do this once, right? Because I'll go over here and I'll draw down money from our line of credit that we've established over the years with the banks. And I'll go and I'll make this purchase. And then I call up my banker, and they're actually doing it for 2 properties right now for us. And I say, hey, look, I've got, XXX Waller Street and XXY Waller Street. I need to go ahead and let's get the refinance going on those because I've drawn down my line of credit, done the cash purchase, doing the remodels that need to be done, and then we're going to go ahead and we're terming that loan out, right? So we're going to refinance that. Well, the bank's going to come back and it's going to appraise for north of $100,000, maybe just north, but it's going to appraise for north of $100,000 on this 3-2. And whenever that happens, guess what? The bank would loan me 80% loan to value of these properties, right? So whenever I go in here and it appraises for, let's just round numbers, say it's $100,000, and they tell me, all right, Lee, we can give you $80,000. Well, that's great, but I only need 70. So I'm just going to take the 70 that I need, because look at what happens if you decide to over leverage. In my opinion, over leverage. Now you're making half of that, right? So a lot of things that it seems like a number of investors kind of miss is the factor of diminishing returns. All right. Which means that if for some reason you're sitting here making 71.35 and you've allowed for 10% vacancy, yet you run 15% vacancy, now you're making $20. Well, let's say that you had some repairs come up, right? So you had an HVAC go out that you just didn't calculate for. Well, now that's going to average out. Now you've got 600 a month for the next year. You're going to run negative over $453 a month on that property. So this is why I tell people, make sure that whenever you do these things, that you give yourself plenty of cushion. You remember back whenever I was going over the FMRs, the fair market rents, they would give me 1317. So, I mean, I very well could get 1300, and that's going to be great. It'll push me up where I need to be. But if it's only 1250, then I need to make sure that I'm prepared for that. So let's go back and get that mortgage back into a reasonable range. Now, here's one of the great things that I love about this, and why I tell people, yes, so long as you can fade the mortgage now and you can run that mortgage out like you would any other thing, right? If the rates never went down, then don't worry about it. You're still making the amount that you set up for yourself. Great. Because we're still buying and we're still refinancing at 8%. We were refinancing at 8.5% earlier this year. Doesn't matter. When you can acquire and you can still get it turnkey, fixed up, and set up to where after the debt service and everything, you still hit your numbers, great. So let's just say that the interest rates go down. And let's say that they drop enough to, like, say 6.5. Let's just live in a utopian world to where the banks come back and say, hey, look, we're at 6.5%. Watch what happens to my cash flow. It just spiked. So, and I understand that to some people, they're like, man, this is just one property. Who cares? Well, whenever you do that at 10 properties, that's not so bad. And whenever you do that at 50 properties, it gets better. And whenever 12 of those 50 properties are paid for with no debt service, it gets even better. Now, I'm going to go ahead and talk about one other thing. And this is why we've been so aggressive about paying down our debt with the bank, right? So this was, it was in 2020, right before lockdown during COVID, right? We were going through And we had just moved a sizable portion of our portfolio at that time over to another bank. We moved it from one bank that it just wasn't really jiving to this other bank, and out of that we had refinanced. It was a little over, I want to say it was like 1.2, 1.3 million worth of properties, but we only financed like 800,000, right? And with that, I'm going to break out the calculator here so we can kind of talk through that a bit. One, let's just say it was 1.2 million. The bank would have given us $960,000. We didn't want 960. We wanted 800, and then we took that other 160 and pledged towards that equity towards a line of credit, right? So LOC. If you hear me start talking about LOC, that just means line of credit. To where I could go out here now and find properties like this one here that we're talking about. And oh, let me bring up my screen because apparently I forgot that that minimizes everything. So I can go over here and I can pick up this property. I can pay cash by drawing down my line of credit, and I'll take that line of credit, there's that capital, buy cash, and then I'll refinance. Why would I do that? Why would I pay closing fees and everything else a couple times? Well, quite simply, because whenever you go to purchase a property, the bank's going to want 20% down. But whenever you already own the property, the bank will refinance you according to their guidelines. And so long as I did what I'm supposed to do, which means negotiate well enough to get that deal, then the bank will refinance me and I can get every dollar back out that I had into that deal. So what's $160,000 get me? That gives me leverage to go over here and buy two properties at a time, sometimes three, depending on the price point that I'm in. I like it, especially whenever I've already got another line of credit because we've folded this over before. And at that point, we had, I want to say it was roughly 8 doors paid for, maybe 10, to where we were able to take and pledge those in a cross, what we call cross collateralization play, to where now it's pledged over here to the bank and it says, hey, look, we're going to set up this line of credit. And in the event that we default, these properties are that collateral for you. So they give us 80% value of those as lines of credit. So at that point, we had $500,000 accessible to us for a line of credit. That just meant that now we could take on more deals, right? And then I also started lending. But all that to say, let's go back to the point, right? To where I borrowed 800, I think it was 800, $850,000. I'll take that over the next 5 years. And this is actually coming up in April of 2025, where that note is maturing. The 5 years coming. Well, what are we going to do? Because hell, we borrowed $800,000, 850, whatever that was. That's great. And what I'm going to do though is I'm going to refinance that. But as of today, because over the years, what we would do is we would sell some of these properties. And again, if you have any questions, if you're watching this, I might not be able to see it if you're commenting on social media or anything like that. So please text me because I'm not seeing anything otherwise, right? But over those years, we had a couple of properties in that package, and we were like, you know what? Property values are really going up right now. So we sold off one, and we sold off another one, sold off another one. Now, I will tell you, it did incur a hell of a tax bill, and that's a different story for a different time. You're going to have to buy me a drink or something to get me to tell that old story. But I can tell you that now, as it stands today, with every payment that we make, we are now under $250,000 owed on that portfolio. So let's do a little bit more math, right? If you haven't had enough math yet, then here comes some more. $250,000. Now, this is before we repledge and we line up everything and we tap into our equity for an expanded line of credit. But let's just say that we go back in there and we owe 200 and well, actually, it'll be just under 200 if I'm not mistaken. But let's say that we're going to take $200,000 and let's just say the bank is even charging us 8, 9, 10%, right? Oh, I don't want to do that. Say that they're charging us 10% on that $200,000. Well, I can tell you right now that I was already for that package alone, that note, I was already paying over $5,100 a month. So you mean to tell me that I'm making a $3,000 a month pay increase by not refinancing anything extra, right? If I just refinance that at a higher interest rate, because we were locked in at 4% on that loan. So if I took that kind of increase, that's a what 150% increase in the interest rate if we go from 4 to 10. So all that to say, I'm going to make a $3,000 a month increase in my pay just by refinancing that. More than likely, the interest rates are going to land around that 7, maybe 7.5 rate, whenever we get there in April. So my note's only going to be 1611. Well, this is where the tactic of a lot of real estate investors comes into play. And it's not one that I've been a part of. I want to pay down debt. So now we're talking about what we're going to do. All right, do we want to take a play? Do we want to withdraw some? Do we want to, pull some back? Because I am launching this 506c fund. I'm investing in it myself because, well, I believe in myself and what I do and my track record. So I would be kind of remiss to not invest where I'm telling other people to invest. So, all that to say, we're looking at pulling out some. So, if we just go back up and let's say that we refinance and we reset our debt to $500,000, 500,000. Okay, I want you to follow me. I can pull $300,000 cash, non-taxable, and then even pay at a higher interest rate and still save over $1,000 a month in what I was paying. What do you think I'm going to do come April? Yeah. So, all that to say, this isn't to flex. This is to let you know, get out there and make some of these deals happen for yourself. It's not as complex as people might make it out to be, because I promise you, if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. I'm going to bring this back up here and I'm going to take just a minute and reply to a couple messages. So if you have anything, if you have any questions, just take a moment. Send me a text to the number that's at the bottom of the screen. See, I've been going, oh, it's already been almost an hour. All right. Hey, Butch. Yeah, man, I appreciate you. I'm going back through looking at some of these. Let's see. Yeah, so that calculator, it's actually one that I had made, and whenever I do my seminars, things like that, that's just part of my little document package that I give people. So, Ron, I think you already have it. If I'm not mistaken, I think you might. So I'll check and make sure. I don't want to charge you twice for anything. So let me just make sure. And if you don't, I'll just send you a copy. Okay. Now, next question. Will somebody go over here and try to take this deal? Hmm, I don't know. Maybe they will. And if you do, and if you did it based on the math that I gave you, hey man, look, just give me a shout out, right? So just say, hey Lee, thanks, or a little something. Because again, right now we've got two properties under contract. We've got a potential flip that we're waiting to hear back on. And on top of it, I've got some requests for loans to go back out. So if you know somebody, by the way, that is they have a flip or a rental that they need to purchase for some short time and then turn around and refinance with their bank, let me know. We've got some capital to lend out, and I'm getting ready to again go on this capital raise and get it going from there. Let's see. Guys, I think that's really about all I've got for tonight. So yeah, came on here and hopefully dropped some knowledge, shared some stuff with you guys. I hope that it was some kind of value that you could use. And if it is value that you can use, do me a favor. Go ahead and like the post, right? Comment on the post. And if you could share it, that's great because Facebook, social media, a lot of these programs, they all run off of algorithms. And these algorithms are basically like based on the engagement. So when you engage with my content, whenever I post something, whether it be funny or not funny, or if it's frustrating, which I don't know why I stay away from that kind of stuff. I try to make it funny or informative, right? Whenever you engage with that, it tells the big computers back at Facebook to say, hey, look, other people like what he's saying. So let's send the word out. So if you could do that for me, I'd greatly appreciate it because that means all the world to me. And it helps me to get out there and get the message out to other people that, maybe are in a similar position to me. Maybe they, have $6,000 to start like I did. Or maybe they've got more, great, good for them. And that's what it takes. But I'm looking to go out there and get my content out to the people that are going to use it, that are going to actually do something with it. Do I need you to come back and use me as your realtor? No. It'd be cool if you did, but I'm not sitting here banking on that, right? I give the content that I give because I have been given to, right? So the people in the community that have helped me out, even to the level that I'm at now, while I might be a little bit past, that onesie twosie deal, I'm not above it. Yeah, I'll still go over here and buy, onesie twosie deals while I'm focusing on launching a $10 million fund. So all that to say, I'm still going to give this content out to the community. I want them to partake in it and learn from it. More importantly, I want them to do something with it, right? So if you could actually help me by like, comment, share these kinds of posts, these things that I do, well, it just helps to get the message out. And I really do appreciate that. I'm looking at a couple locations to do a seminar in Southwest Florida. And I don't know, to be honest with you, whenever I'll do another one back in Northwest Louisiana again. Um, I've got to find a schedule, a time, and a few other things. Also, if you are part of a RIA or a real estate investor association, and they need somebody to come by and speak, share their story, or if you have podcasts, anything like that, I'm more than happy to go out there, share some time, share the story, share the journey. And if you have seen me for any length of time, I'm not going to pull punches. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and let you decide for yourself where you want to go from there. So I'm going to wrap this up. And look, I hope you all have a great evening. If you need anything, the number that you can text your questions to is the same number that you could reach out to if you need to schedule anything. So y'all have a great night.